What is your name and what state do you live in?
My first name's Tom. Last name is Kibler. I'm in Minnesota.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Kibler.
When did your foreclosure start and what was the outcome, or is it currently open?
Well, it's ongoing. I had been induced effective October 1st of 2009 to stop making payments for 90 days, ostensibly to get a rate modification. Millions of us heard the same story. 65 days in, January 5th, 2010, JP Morgan Chase sent me a notice of intent to foreclose. And that's where when it started. Interestingly enough, no one at Chase was around for me to talk to, so I contacted the FDIC, who Chase said that they had gotten my mortgage from after the WAMU collapse. And the FDIC, I have names on my website and in my affidavit of the people at the FDIC and the Federal Reserve Board of Governors who both confirmed to me, sorry, Chase lied to you. We didn't convey any WAMU mortgages to them. So we've had a problem going all that time. But to cut to the chase, they did get a summary judgment, which is void, in 2020, and they're trying to evict as we speak. But again, they can't prove any jurisdiction, which I've challenged. So I'm given that chance.
Are you in a judicial or a non-judicial state?
I'm in a non-judicial state. I stopped about 14 non-judicial foreclosures before they finally filed judicially. And I thought that it would be a piece of cake to make it go away because they didn't have any standing and I had proof of fraud and forgery. But evidently they arranged the right judge and got a judgment anyway.
So you had forged assignments and endorsements in your case. What kind of evidence did you get? Do you have an expert investigator, or was it a robo-signer, a known robo-signer?
Yeah, well, I've got, again, on my website, which anyone can look at, www.1694 Valerie Lane, New Brighton, MN.com. Many documents attached, but I've got a forged assignment that's facially invalid, dated October 2nd, 2012, purporting to assign to a Rebek trust that was closed August 30th, 2005. Absolutely impossible unless they had a time machine, because of course, when it's closed, it's closed. And I also contacted my robo-signer, the person that had signed the documents, Brandon Johnson. It's all out there in public. As a vice president of Chase, I finally tracked him down a few years back, spoke to him, found out that he was actually a seasonal temporary clerk who signed hundreds of these documents every hour, not in the presence of a notary. They then moved them over to another building where a notary stamped and signed them. And so I've got his affidavit saying I was not the vice president of Chase. I had no firsthand knowledge. I had no authority. I was a temp clerk. And they basically used me to, facilitate fraud. So we had that. We also have a counterfeit note. And I had a forensic expert in attendance at a hearing that wanted to analyze it. The judge wouldn't let him. And it also has the copy, a rubber stamp, fake forged endorsement of a gentleman named Jess Almanza. Jess has testified in Shelley Erickson's case in Washington that he never signed or endorsed any notes. Somebody is applying his signature via rubber stamp to these notes. I found out that it's not my servicer, because my servicer has sent me 2 more copies of notes with absolutely no endorsement. So that it's coming from either the foreclosure mill attorney or someone else in their underground network. But it's orchestrated fraud.
Thank you. So the entities coming into foreclose on millions of people and continuing to do so today are representing themselves to be trustees for trusts. Yet these trusts often no longer exist, or like you said, had no capacity to foreclose. I know you already said that the trust that they were naming had already been closed when the assignment was made.
Right.
And you had an expert in your case. So I'm not going to ask about any more to do with that, but I do want to ask, did you find any evidence that the party coming into foreclose had no capacity to demand foreclosure, had not been injured?
Oh, absolutely. That not only had they not been injured, again, JP Morgan Chase, who claimed that they were conveyed all of these documents and interest in the mortgage. I've got people at the FDIC and Federal Reserve Board of Governors saying, no, that never happened. So eventually Chase got tired of fighting with me and did this assignment, which again, I didn't see it until early 2013, but they've been trying to take my house 10, 11, and 12 before that. And the assignment, again, was to this Long Beach Mortgage Loan Trust 2005 WL2 with Deutsche Bank National Trust Company as trustee. It's very interesting. Deutsche Bank National Trust Company out in Santa Ana, California, is the former Bankers Trust Company. They're not affiliated with Deutsche Bank. They're not a bank. They're not a trust company. They're not a trustee. Jean-Michel Latene actually talked to two different agents on the phone who admitted that they just rent out the use of their name to facilitate fraud, and that they have nothing to do with any of the empty, shelved REMIC trusts.
To facilitate the foreclosures, right? Yes.
Right.
Okay. Did you ever get any evidence that, you just went over that, the evidence that the party that was foreclosing was not owed the debt?
Right.
Okay, so what was your experience in getting discovery in your case?
I got shut down altogether. We requested a bunch of discovery. We got nothing. And then they motioned for a summary judgment hearing, which again, I thought would be a cakewalk because my first answer to them had either 17 or 19 material fact issues. And of course, summary judgment is only possible, supposedly, if there are no material fact issues in question. So we had a lot of discovery, which we got none of, and the judge said, well, that's because there was just a fishing expedition. So it's not a big deal that you didn't get discovery. It was crazy. And like I said, the judge, even if he had jurisdiction, which he never did, committed a horrible violation of due process rights when he refused to allow the forensic expert in attendance to look at, review, and inspect the counterfeit notes. So at that time, he lost what jurisdiction he might have claimed, but it doesn't matter. He rendered a judgment. But again, according to their laws and their rules, it's a void judgment, which is a nullity and unenforceable and of no legal force or effect.
Thank you so much. Did you ever try to look for an attorney to help you in your case? What was your experience with that?
I talked to every attorney in Minnesota that advertised that they did anything to do with real estate or foreclosure. I visited with many of them. I had a lot of them try and get me to give them, excuse me, big retainers. And I ended up dealing with one suspended, now disbarred attorney who was working with a friend who had no experience in the field, but he wasn't suspended or disbarred, so he could represent. And in the end, I wasted way too much money, and they threw me under the bus. I've been disabled for 5 years because of this, which we'll get into a little later. But as I recovered from my surgery that's caused the disability, I've literally spent my waking hours all day, every day, researching and uncovering an awful lot of information and fraud and evidence of multiple crimes. And I provided so much to the attorneys, and they used little to none of it. And I couldn't figure out why until I finally figured out, well, they're not on my side. They're just actors.
So you say that the attorneys that you turn to for help, you believe that they were actors, you say?
Oh, absolutely. They weren't doing their best to help me.
Did you find any, or do you know of any honest attorneys that were disbarred?
Oh, I do. Bill Butler here in Minnesota was one of the first. Probably 9 years ago. Bill was following Neil Garfield and Jon Stewart, and he filed quiet title challenges for, I want to say 50, 60 people. And because of that, he was attacked by the courts in Minnesota, and the Supreme Court went after him. And even though he was absolutely in the right, they kept calling his quiet title actions a throw me the note, which has already been, disproven as, not effective. And it had nothing to do with show me the note. It was a quiet title. Again, prove that you have any kind of interest. And they couldn't. Interestingly enough, they went after Bill so badly, they destroyed his family, his marriage, put him out of business, rendered him homeless for a while, and they're still going after him. But of course, we've all heard of Mark Stopa and several other people after that.
Thank you.
It's a constant. Anyone that's effective gets attacked.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Did you learn about any conflicting interests that the judge in your case had, which they didn't report?
That's a great question. The financial disclosures are very, very sketchy, so they show very little. But Renee Weiler, former mortgage broker and a very active auditor to do it, Weiler Merz mortgage audits, found out that my judge has and had multiple, and by multiple, we're talking, I believe the number was over 20 MERS mortgages showing up in his name, and most of them paid off in a short period of time. Which Janet Phelan, of course, has posited that that's just evidence of money laundering and where the bribes go.
Thank you. What's been your experience in joining any class actions or multi-plaintiff actions for homeowners?
Boy, we've been involved in trying several, and none have come together so far. As you know, with APON, we tried with Bruce Jacobs, we tried with Neil Garfield, and we tried with Jeff Barnes. And my opinion is that most of the time those don't work out so well for the participants or the plaintiffs. Evidently, I don't have any knowledge of any successes in the homeowner foreclosure fraud arena, but I believe, again, that's because, this is very interesting. I have a friend who over the weekend was invited to listen in on a conference call with multiple retired judges. The discussion was why they are being ordered to screw homeowners, throw them under the bus, try to invalidate all foreclosure defense. And the orders are coming from the top, from the Federal Reserve on down. And these judges had a couple different suggestions on what they would recommend to people on how they might go about challenging foreclosures that may work based on what they know, which is that the judges are threatened and more than likely bribed to find against the homeowners. I thought that was striking to hear some retired judges actually talk about that and admit it.
Thank you. What has been your experience in getting help from the HAMP program, the latest Homeowners Assistance Fund, the CFPB, legal aid organizations, or the FBI or any government officials or agencies?
Wow. I have been, as I said, been at this hard full time for 5 years, and I've gotten nowhere. The FBI has done absolutely nothing. The SEC has done absolutely nothing. OCC has done nothing. CFPB, 60, 70 different complaints. They've done nothing. However, my most recent one is very interesting because I sent a complaint to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And I said, Deutsche Bank National Trust Company, Santa Ana, California, not affiliated with Deutsche Bank. They're not a trust company. They have admitted they rent out the use of their name to facilitate fraud. And that was forwarded from the FTC to the CFPB. The CFPB reached out to Deutsche Bank National Trust Company, who answered back, we're not involved in this. We're the wrong party. Basically admitting that the attorneys are listing them as a fictitious plaintiff when they're really not involved, which is a violation of their Rule 17 and their Rule 11 and Rule 60C for fraud. So that's interesting. But yeah, as well, almost nobody so far has done anything. The legal aid folks are refusing to do anything. The Attorney General and the Commerce Commissioner, even though they are signatories on the National Mortgage Settlement, refuse to do anything. And of course, the National Mortgage Settlement that paid 25 billion across the, coast to coast, and almost 300 million in Minnesota. Four of the big points were that they were supposed to cleanse the land records of all the known forged and fabricated documents. They were supposed to redress injuries to affected homeowners. They were supposed to investigate fraud and crime and prosecute fraud and crime. Looks like that 300 million pretty much got swept into the general fund, and almost nothing has been done properly. So I'm still trying to schedule meetings with the governor and the attorney general and Secretary of State, Department of Commerce, both my senators, my congresswoman. Everyone's pretty good at hiding. No one's very good at doing anything, which it's been interesting again, because the conversation has been with most, again, I'm dealing with clerks who are polite, but they say, we can't guarantee that they'll schedule a meeting. You understand it's at their discretion. To which my response has been, it is not at their discretion. I'm one of the people. They are public servants who've taken oaths. They're sworn to protect our property and our rights. And we expect them to follow their oaths, or they'll be removed from office, which we're also allowed to do without an election, just by force of the people, according to our state constitutions. That gets the attention of the staff. But so far, I'm still waiting for meetings to be scheduled.
Thank you. So can you tell me a little bit about what this, all this, how many years, 12 years now of court battle has done to you in terms of financially or to your health and well-being?
Yeah, well, yeah. The view from 30,000 feet is when this began in early 2010, my ex-wife had a breakdown. And in the middle of that year, she left. Unfortunately, she liquidated pretty much all of our funds and left with those. So I found myself at that time unemployed. I'd come from the mortgage arena, uninsured with two badly deteriorated hips. I was in need of surgery. And so basically, she took everything out of the house that she wanted and took what liquid funds we had. Left me with two vehicles, a mortgage.
So she had a breakdown due to the the
stress.
What happened? Yeah,
it's stress induced, and I did as well. I was very fortunate to find a job real quickly after that, which gave me insurance, and I worked that contract job, and at the end of that, got the insurance that I needed. But again, dealing through the 14 non-judicial foreclosure attempts, going to work every day, not knowing when you come back, if some criminals will have broken in and changed the locks to put your stuff out on the driveway, etc., was such a level of stress. I thought I handled it well because I was just used to it. But on March 16th, 2017, I was admitted to the hospital for issues that my legs were basically giving out on me and going numb, and I couldn't figure out why. And they ran some tests, said, "Oh my goodness, we're taking you for surgery. You've had an aortic dissection." I didn't know what it was at the time, but it's basically an aneurysm of the aorta that rips rather than bursts. About 80% of people die from it right away. And I ended up having 2 emergency surgeries for that, 8-10 hours apart, because they kind of botched the first one. My recovery was very difficult, and it sent me to an old folks home for a few weeks. And a lot of rehab, etc. But cognitively, when you're on bypass, you have what's called hypothermic arrest. Basically, your brain is, without circulation for an hour at a time. I had 2 of those back to back, and it causes cognitive changes. So few people have survived this, that there's not really good studies, but it left me permanently disabled from being able to do what I used to do. I was a commercial insurance broker and used to analyze very detailed policies and a lot of things like that that I just have been unable to do since then. So
Okay,
this
thank you.
darn near killed me, very severely impacted the finances, destroyed my family, and they haven't stopped. They're still trying. Right as we speak, they've been trying to evict me. With, again, absolutely no injured party, proof of forged documents, counterfeit instruments, all kinds of issues, and including at my website, the 2 parties coming after me are not qualified in the state of Minnesota or most states to conduct business, own property, or access the courts. So I've
Thank
got
you.
unqualified entities trying to steal my home.
Thank you.